Hello, and welcome to my madness. I call it madness because, well, I must be crazy to be talking about this stuff. Recently, I was scrolling through NPR's headlines, like I typically do, and I came across an article titled Trump Plans Order to Cut Funding for NPR and PBS. Now, these are public broadcast services, and NPR is it's pretty much my go-to for news because I know they're not there to entertain, unlike some news stations which have claimed that they are entertainment. And also, they're not worried about ratings. So this was published April 15, 2025, written by David Folkenflik and Scott Newman. And they write that the Trump administration has drafted a memo to Congress outlining its intent to end nearly all federal funding for public media, which includes NPR and PBS, according to a White House official who spoke to NPR. They also go on to write that in a statement on Monday that did not refer to the memo, the White House said, for years, American taxpayers have been on the hook for subsidizing national public radio and the public broadcasting service, which spread radical, woke propaganda disguised as news. The statement includes examples of what the White House said is trash that passes as news and intolerance of non-leftist views. Unfortunately, the article did not include any of these examples of what is being referred to as trash that passes as news. However, I was intrigued by non-leftist viewpoints because this is not the first time I've heard this type of reference. They call it the radical left. So just what might that be? So let's explore the foundations and manifestations of liberal left politics. And, in contemporary political discourse, conversations and such, the term liberal left is frequently thrown about. And I don't know about you, but it's not something I'm familiar with. Liberal left? Oh, what do you mean by that? Of course, I don't necessarily understand this idea of conservative right, but we'll get to that another time. So this whole idea of liberal left is a set of ideologies that advocate for progressive change, social justice, and the enhancement of individual liberties. Hey, that's not a bad idea, is it? Social justice. Wow, what a concept. There's another one that we should probably explore, and I will put it on my list here. And the enhancement of individual liberties. Well, that's important, particularly with what's going on now. So let's look at this idea in some of the different contexts. For instance, the ideological foundations of this liberal left threat that they are so worried about. It's an amalgamation, or a collection, I should say, of what they call liberal and leftist ideologies. Well, okay. liberalism, there we go, has its roots in the Enlightenment age, which occurred quite a while ago. And the idea with liberalism, which is definitely something we will dig into a little deeper because it plays a huge role in the formation of the United States. Believe it or not, the United States was founded on liberal principles. Wow. So, the idea with this was, individual rights, democracy, the rule of law. Wow, that last one, that's a real stretch. The rule of law. Wow. Can you imagine people actually obeying the law, or the law being able to be enforced? What a concept. And as we're looking at this, liberalism advocates for personal freedoms. And these personal freedoms include freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of religion. Wait a second here. Isn't this already covered in our Constitution? Bill of Rights? This is the liberal left idea? Whoa, no wonder the AP got kicked out. They don't fit. And continuing with this, alongside this, there's economic freedoms such as free markets, the ability to own property. None of this stuff sounds unusual. And it also recognizes the role of the state in addressing social inequalities. Social inequalities. That means that the liberal left not only protects the rights of your ability to practice the religion in whatever format you choose, unless, of course, you want to get really, really minute, and you want to say that this is a reference to the prevalent religion at the time our documents were put together. In other words, it favors one broad religion and its inherent denominations that have formed. All the others, such as Islam, Buddhism, spiritualism, Hinduism, all that stuff does not qualify. Well, until there's a ruling on that, they do qualify. So what else in this social equalities does it protect? Well, remember these policies on diversity and equality and inclusion? That's all part of this liberal left ideology. These policies were to prevent people from being discriminated against, not to put one in front of the other. But, the unenlightened don't quite understand that. So these social inequalities that are being addressed or are supposed to be addressed include discrimination based on race, discrimination based on sex, discrimination based on religion, disabled people. Hey, now there's one. People who are disabled. Now, Mr. Trump likes to poke fun at people who are disabled. He dismisses them, which is unbecoming of a leader. And by the way, I'm also one of those disabled persons that he likes to poke fun at. It's not that I'm getting even or anything. I'm trying to present information that people can understand. We read this stuff in the news. We hear these terms bandied about on news reports, but do we understand them? And the even bigger question is, are you going to take time to understand these, to look these terms up, to get a feel for them? Probably not. Most people, once they get out of high school, if they don't go into college, that's it. They want no more education at all. And let's face it, we've got a lot of these gurus here that tell everybody the uselessness of education. And people are gullible. They don't realize that those people who are saying that, they are the exceptions, not the rule. So now this leftist ideology, because, liberal, those were all liberal ideas here. Now we've got leftists, is focused on collective rights and social equality. And this might be where they get nasty about it, because they include the ideas associated with socialism and communism. And people get weirded out with all of that. So let's take a brief look at what socialism and communism actually are. Socialism is an economic and political system where companies are owned and controlled by the state or the government or the community as a whole. Think of some of these corporations that are owned by the employees. Now, take that concept and then just expand it. And the idea behind that is to reduce economic disparities and to ensure that wealth and resources are distributed equally among everyone. Equally among everyone. And socialism also advocates for public ownership of industries, universal health care, free education, welfare programs. We're familiar with all of this. Our society is a blended society because we include some of these ideas borrowed from socialism, such as the health care that we have. We have Medicare, we have Medicaid, and then we have, the regular stuff. But Medicaid is a watered down version of this socialist idea of universal health care. Medicare is the same way. It's right along there. Free education, we have a version of that. We call it public education, which, by the way, is not always all that great. You know what I mean? And the welfare programs. Well, the whole idea of welfare programs is to assist people in need, typically when they're going over a rough spot, not to be intended as a means of living. And along with this, socialism is about creating a society where the wealth is not concentrated in the hands of a few, but is shared amongst the population. That's socialism. Is it something that I would agree to? No, because in my opinion, it takes away a lot. Who wants to work for everybody else? And more importantly, how would it address social loafing? And social loafing is when people are carried by the system. We have a lot of social loafers that are dragging on the system. And because they're dragging on the system, these are the people who choose not to work, who choose not to become educated, who choose not to be a productive part of society, who chooses, they're essentially dead weight. Now, as I said, these are people that choose to be like this. Huge difference between choice and circumstance. Huge difference, because I cannot work a normal job. My brain tends to slow down when it gets loaded up. So I can't work a regular job. But that does not prevent me from contributing to society as a whole. I assist, I contribute in other means. I rent rooms out to people. I prepare these presentations. I continue to expand my realm of knowledge. So again, social loafing versus circumstances. My circumstances don't allow me to work a regular job, but they don't allow me to be one of those social loafers. So let's consider communism. Now, communism is a more extreme version of socialism. Their idea is a classless society. Think of it as taking collectivism to the extreme. Now, this is an extreme ideology, because if everybody is the same, well, then how are you going to progress? And that's one of the things that they say is the problem with communism and socialism. They lack incentive for the individual to be innovative or to contribute fully, not just enough to get by. And also, in this type of a society, they also envision that all property is community owned. Nobody owns anything. Well, where's that sense in that? We are a material people. We like to consume. We are consumers. So this isn't going to work. Also, the ultimate goal of communism is to abolish private ownership entirely. Well, that was covered with everything belonging to the community. No class distinctions. And this doesn't work. It sounds great in theory, but it's not something that could ever work, because the people who dreamed this up had this utopia in mind. But we cannot live in a utopian society. We must struggle. We must suffer. It's just who we are. It identifies us. Of course, then there's the idea that communism just absolutely despises capitalism, which is probably another one that we should get an understanding of. So, when you combine this with the liberal left ideology, it's supposed to promote a balance between individual liberties and social equities, but it doesn't. It also is intended to support progressive policies to create a more fairer society, a more equal society, while preserving fundamental freedoms. Well, I don't really think that would happen either. There's just too much everybody getting along together, and we already know that doesn't work. That's been tried numerous times, and it just does not work. Or some of the policies that the liberal left might consider would be, well, economic justice. There's a good one. This is one of the primary concerns, economic justice, which means policies that would include progressive taxation. Well, that's not a bad thing. We need taxes to pay for social programs to pay for the infrastructure of the country, to pay for the military, for defense. Taxes are needed. And they also advocate minimum wage increases. I don't see a problem with that. Minimum wage should go up. It should keep pace, at least with inflation, at minimum with inflation. And at the same time, these minimum wage jobs should not be considered careers. Wake up, people. Minimum wage is to get you started, is to get you from point A to point B. It does not mean that you can party in between point A and point B. That's not what minimum wage jobs are for. Social welfare programs. Some of them are a bit ridiculous. Some of them are needed. Some of them need to be revamped, reevaluated. So, this is not altogether a bad idea that's being done. His Department of Government Efficiency. However, efficiency does not mean getting rid of people. It does not mean violating protocols. It does not mean violating policy. It does not mean violating the law. You can accomplish all of this by following the steps that have already been outlined, instead of trying to push everybody out. So let's look at something else in here. In the United States, the liberal left politicians have advocated for universal health care. Yeah, that's Medicaid and Medicare. Higher taxes on the wealthy. No, I don't believe that is fair. They should pay their fair taxes, but to target them, that's not right. That's just not right. Because if you target them, where's the incentive to continue? Where's the incentive to be innovative? It's just not there. Stronger labor protections. Well, that is important. We need to make sure that these corporations are not taking advantage of people. However, we got rid of these diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. So, maybe those labor protections went out the door with them. It's very possible. Will this address the income inequality that they're complaining about? And will it ensure economic security for all citizens? Well, probably not. If you want better wages, you need to prepare yourself. I had to prepare myself. I had to take classes to get into positions when I was working that paid more. There's no reason why anybody else can't do that. Yeah, it's a struggle. It's supposed to be a struggle. If it's a struggle and you make time for it, then it's of value to you. If it's just handed to you, come on. Remember when you were a kid, all those things that were given to you, all those presents and everything, you busted them up and, they'll give me another one. But when you had to start buying your own stuff, well, you didn't really tear it up as quickly, did you? Huge difference. Huge difference. Social justice. Well, this is another cornerstone of this liberal left concept. And this involves fighting against discrimination and promoting equal opportunities for everybody, regardless of race, gender, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status. Hey, just because you make under $18,000 a year doesn't mean that you have to stay there. That all sounds good. And it's part of the liberal concept. And the liberal concept is this idea that you can live as you like, as long as you are not imposing your lifestyle your beliefs, your thoughts upon other people. So, if the people that live next door to me are gay or transsexual or whatever, hey, that's their business. So long as they're not hitting on me, so long as they're not getting in my face about it, who cares? They have a right to be happy. Other policies are the affirmative action, anti-discrimination laws. Yeah, well, that's all gone now. That's all gone now. And these policies and everything that they threw out the window were not intended to keep anybody down. The whole purpose of these things was to give everybody an equal footing. You don't want to be dismissed from a potentially good paying job that you're actually qualified for because you happen to be Black, you happen to be disabled, can't walk properly, but you can do the work. That's what that's intended to. It's to level the playing field. And what they should have done with that was just make everybody, when they put in their applications and resumes and stuff, don't identify themselves by ethnicity. Don't identify themselves by religion. Don't identify themselves by ideology. Just put the information there. But this is not the society that we live in. It never has been, and it never will be. People will always have their prejudices. It's just a fact of life. Environmental protection. There's nothing wrong with protecting the environment, and there's nothing wrong with exploring sustainable processes. A majority of houses are built with wood. We have to gather all of that wood, the resource, in a sustainable way. We just can't clear huge swaths of trees and forests and such and expect no landslides to happen when it rains. That's just foolish. So yes, we need to protect. We need to learn to do things in a sustainable fashion. It's no different than running a business. A business should be ran in sustainable. What that means by is that it can support itself. Climate change, well, we're experiencing it. The science is there. If we dismiss the science, then what are we left? We're left with religion. We are right back to doing the rain dance during the droughts and everything. Do we want that? I don't. Reduce pollution. Well, that makes perfect sense. Do you know that plastic particulates are now in every aspect of our food chain? They're in the water, they're in everything we eat, they're in the air we breathe. They are in us. And, we're worried about genetically modified foodstuffs. We're worried about vaccines. Yet, we have cases upon cases of bottled water in plastic bottles leaching plastic particles into it, and we're okay with that. Where's the sense in this? Where is the sense in this? And one of the things here, we have this Green New Deal, which was proposed in the United States. This is an example of a liberal left initiative aimed at moving the economy towards a sustainable economy, creating jobs, reducing economic inequality and such. And another one is human rights. What's wrong with human rights? These, these human rights that they're in support of is refugee rights, opposing human trafficking, promoting international cooperation to protect human dignity. I mean, these are good. What is wrong with these? Now, this has nothing to do with illegal immigrants. Illegal immigrants, yes, they should be rounded up. They should be sent back. But those who are allowed into the country, those who follow the rules and such, no, they should not be shipped out. Asylum seekers, there's a reason why people are getting away from where they were at. They're seeking safety, security. It makes sense. These are all leftist, liberal ideas. Some of them can be carried to the extreme. But if they are moderated, that would be fantastic. They work out. We've got some of those ideas already in place that people don't want to get rid of. Social Security, that is a leftist liberal ideal. Liberal left, there we go. Oh. Either way, it's it's part of that whole concept. And if you want a current example of liberal left policies, ideas, ideology, and everything, follow Bernie Sanders. Senator Sanders is a prominent figure in this whole liberal left ideology. And, he brought to the forefront income equality, healthcare reform. Healthcare does need to be reformed. Healthcare, that whole entire sector is out of control. People can't survive because they're indebted to the healthcare system. That makes sense. But universal healthcare for everybody at no cost, there needs to be cost in there. I would be in agreement with that. Climate change, well, yes. There's the science is there. It's there. Free education, we've already got free education from kindergarten all the way up to high school, 12th grade. To go further than that, tack a fee onto it, but don't make it so exorbitant that it just turns people away. There is room for some of these ideas. We don't have to keep people down. We want everybody to reach their potential. But then again, that's another liberal idea. And people should be able to reach their potential. And, despite all these noble goals and everything, the opponents argue that liberal left policies can lead to excessive government intervention. It can stifle economic growth and individual initiative. And yes, it can. So, they're not all bad ideas. They're a bit extreme. And, we've had enough of extremism. We've got both political parties, party lines don't budge. This has been happening for almost 16 years. drawing a line in the sand. They don't budge or anything. They're, everything that gets passed supports one party or the other, not the citizens of the United States. So the term liberal left encompasses a broad spectrum of ideologies and policies with the purpose of creating a more just and equitable society. It's a good idea, but it's an idea because not everybody it doesn't work for like that. You can't have just one party idea. You have to have many ideas that come together. The whole purpose of compromise is to get rid of the stuff that's harmful and to try and build on the stuff that's beneficial. Advocating for individual liberties and social justice and environmental sustainability, those are great, admirable ideas that can be reached, but not through extreme avenues. So that's an idea of what they mean by liberal left. And it's not bad. I wouldn't say it's good. I wouldn't say it's bad. I wouldn't say it's harmful. I would say that it is an extreme point of view, and extremism has never ever worked. We've gone for decades with being somewhere in the middle, moving back and forth, but in the middle. And it's only recently that everything is moved out to the extremes, out to the outliers of the bell curve. We need to get back closer to the center again. We need to have bipartisanship, or we need a third party that can encourage these two sides, because there's nothing wrong with the Republicans, there's nothing wrong with the Democrats. Only when they do everything along party lines, and then they are no longer serving the citizens of the United States, they're serving their own agendas. And we have to recognize that. So I want to thank you for listening to this. I hope it was helpful. I hope it gave you some general ideas. It's up to you to explore those ideas even further. But at least you have a general understanding of what they're saying by liberal leftists or leftist ideas and such. So thank you very much, and you have a wonderful day.